Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the vlog. And in today's episode we are going to be dealing with the Audi S3. Yes, a car that you haven't seen on this channel for such a long time. It is due a major service. So we've done a service last year, but this year we're going to be changing all the fluids. So that's oil and brakes. So we're going to be doing a brake flush on the fluids, and that's quite important because you need to do your brake fluid at least every 2 years, and the reason being is because the brake lines and the fluid will pick up particles that reside within the brake lines, and also it will pick up moisture, etc., and all of that will just lead to a deterioration of the fluid. So in order to keep your brakes in tip-top condition, you should flush them every 2 years. So in the first 3 years, as part of your warranty on year 3, your brakes will be flushed, but after that you should do it every 2 years. So we're going to be doing that today, and I'm going to be showing you the tools that we will use for that. There's 2 tools that I use, and this is one of them. So this is a brake bleeding kit, and normally you use these kind of kits to pull the fluid through, but I'm not a fan of this. I only use this to bring the reservoir down to its maximum level, but I don't actually use this kit to bleed the brakes. And the reason being is that what tends to happen is you put this end over the nipple on the caliper, and if you don't get a seal, a airtight seal, and sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to do that, what basically happens is you introduce air into the system. So the system that I'm going to be using, which you'll see in a minute, is a pressure system, which we pump it up, and I'll show you how to set that up, and then that pushes the fluid into the system. And the only thing we need to do is to make sure that we don't run out of fluid in the canister. Much easier and much easier to maintain. So we're going to be doing that, then we'll be doing the oil and filter change, and then hopefully we'll get the brake pads, and we're just changing the pads on the car this time around because the discs look okay. So lots to come. Let's get on and start the show. Okay, so this is the unit that I'm going to use to bleed the brakes. Now I've had this for a while and it is absolutely brilliant. Now if you want to get hold of these, you'll see it on my Amazon store. Check out the link below. But there are several versions of these, and they're done by the same company essentially, but what they do, very interestingly, is they change the ends here. Now if you're wondering what that red stuff is, it's basically glue, because I've modified this one and I put a more heavy duty connector. This is well, it's just a heavy duty connector, because you need that to be able to disconnect so that you can pull it onto the brake cylinder. And then this is essentially a pneumatic air system, and that literally just clicks on like that, and that is it, and it's an airtight seal. That's the reason why mine is modified, because the connector was slightly bigger. But other than that, these are brilliant because they're a pressure system. What you do is you literally pump it up so that this gauge is in the blue. It doesn't have to be that high, and you do need to be careful with some cars, because particularly older cars, you want to have the pressure in the middle and not too high, so that you don't blow the lines, because there's a distinct possibility that you can do that. So essentially what you do is you then bleed the brakes, and you just check this periodically to make sure that it's still got pressure in there, because you don't want it to run low on pressure. And also you got to check the unit itself to make sure that it's got enough brake fluid as well. Now the pipe here goes right down to the bottom corner here, so it's quite low in terms of its pickup, but you really want to make sure that this keeps full. And that's the beauty of this system. It's larger than other systems on the market, which means that if you put, I'm going to put a litre of this .4 oil in, which will take it about here, and that should be enough to bleed this whole system. So let's fill her up, and then we'll get her pumped up. And there's another piece that comes with this. We'll just grab it. So this is the filler reservoir. This bit here goes over the bleed nipple, and then you can watch the fluid come through here and make sure it's nice and clear. And this is the bit that I was talking about on the other system. When you put these on, sometimes you get a bit of a air loss. And also when you loosen the nipple, you get air can get sucked in through the screw. And with the pressure system, that avoids that. It's pushing out the fluid rather than sucking it. So that's why these systems are better. Good, right, let's get this filled up and let's get the first wheel done. Now, before we bleed the brakes on the car, I want to talk to you today about today's amazing sponsor. Watch this. Now, you may not know this, but a lot of the inspiration that I get for modding my vehicles or just ideas on what to do on my projects comes from me reading about these things in magazines. But of course, going to the shop and buying loads of different magazines is a real pain. That's why I'm really glad that I've got a Readly subscription. Now, if you don't know what Readly is, it's a digital magazine subscription that you can get on your phone or your tablet. I use my tablet and it gives you access to thousands of different magazines. Now, you know that I'm a car person, so I like looking at various cars and people's ideas and really getting exposure to different car packages from around the world. And Readly gives you that option because not only do you get magazines that are based from the UK, but you can also see what's happening in different scenes as well from different countries around the world. So not only do I use Readly for catching up on what's happening on the car modeling scene and just generally what's going on in the car industry, I also use it for my work because I work in the tech industry, as most of you may know, and so I look at a lot of the tech magazines, computer-based magazines as well. And interestingly, even my wife the other day, she was looking at some household magazines for some ideas on decorating the home. And the good thing that Readly does is it allows you to have multiple profiles, and then that way it's tailor-made for the person that is using the app at the time. Now, some of the features that I like about Readly and the app is that you can read magazines offline. So if you're traveling and you're not going to have access to Wi-Fi, you can download the magazines beforehand and read them offline. You can also get back issues of magazines. So if you missed an episode of something or a series, you can back date that and look at older editions of those magazines again on your app. And you can also bookmark your favorite item or article so that you can refer to it at a later date. It's a really versatile app that has a number of really good benefits. Now, because Readly is a digital magazine, it means you don't have to carry bulky magazines with you stuffed in your bag. You can either use it on your phone for convenience, or if you happen to have your tablet with you, you can use it on your tablet and have access to thousands of different magazines. So let's just sum this up. You get over 35 different categories of magazines for you to enjoy and read. So if you're not sure, you can try it for 2 months for free, and then it's $7.99 a month, and you can cancel at any time. So what are you waiting for? Use the link below to sign up and start enjoying the benefits of Readly today. Okay, so we've taken off the cap, we've fitted our reservoir cap on top here, and if you look down carefully you can just see the level, and it's quite low. It should be right up there, but it's really low, so it's just basically the oil evaporating over time with the hot use. But the fluid is quite dark as well, so it is probably well overdue. I mean, this car is 4 years old, so it definitely does need doing. So what we'll do is we'll connect this up, and it's a simple just connect, there you go. And then what we'll do is we'll pump this up and make sure we can get a good seal. So we'll give that a good pump, and then eventually we'll get some pressure in there, hopefully. Need to tighten that a little bit, it's a bit loose. There we go. so we can see some pressure building up now. In fact, what I'll do, I'll probably, rather than what you watch me, I'll come back to when we're finished, loaded up. Right, okay, so there we go. So we've got about 20 bar of pressure in there, which is good. And we've got a nice seal here. We're not leaking any fluid, which is even better. So now we can go back and start the bleeding process. Okay, so we've at the back of the car, and notice we're at the near side rear. Now when you are flushing the system, you don't have to apply the rule of furthest away first, because you're not introducing any air in the system and there's no gap in the system. In other words, you haven't replaced the system that's introduced air. If you are doing that, there's a procedure that you need to follow for an Audi anyway because of the ABS pump. But you should always start from the furthest. So if I replace this brake pipe here and I introduce air into the system, I would bleed this first to clear all the air, and then you'll go work your way back to the nearest point to where your master cylinder is, or your brake filler cylinder. But because we're just bleeding this, then we don't need to apply that rule. So the nipple is just here, and we use an 11mm spanner to loosen it. And then we basically will just put this over the edge of the nipple, and then we should be able to bleed it and watch it go through. Right, so I have now bled this side, so we've got one more side to do. But before we do that, since owning this car, I've never actually put this shield back in. So I'm gonna put it on now, since we've got this apart. Makes absolute sense to do that, so let's do that. Okay, so we gave it a little bit of a pump, and the fluid is about there. If you can see where my finger is, it's just about there. So the last side now, so we'll get that bled, and then I'll show you what the fluid looks like. Okay, so there's a fluid that we've drained, and it's a good sort of 600 ml fluid that we've collected, and as you can see, it's quite dark, so it's dirty, and we still got quite a good flow in the car. So what we do here now is we just release the pressure by pulling up, and then that should retract the fluid out the pipe, which it has, and then we release the valve from here, and that makes sure that we don't leak any fluid all over the car, which is great. And then we can return whatever's left in here back into the bottle. Now the next thing is that we now need to bring this down to the correct level, which is just below this max marker here. Right, so we're going to use this now to suck out some of the fluid in there because it's too high at the moment, and this will at least take it out. You can see it coming out now, and we can just bring it down to where it should be, which is about there. So we're in a good place, And that is done, and that is the whole reason why I use this fork. It's good for sucking fluid out. But now we're at the right level, and we can now put a cap on, and we need to warm the engine up now so that we can drain the oil. Okay, so we've got the oil draining. Now we just need to do the same at the top, and let's get the oil filter out now. Right, so while the oil is draining out, we're going to take off the filter. That should release some more oil. Here we go. That's coming along just fine. Okay. And what you tend to find is when you take these off, you'll get a little suction, and then the rest of the oil should just drain down without spilling. Here we go, a bit of friction. There's a suction. Yeah. I'm just being very careful taking this out so we don't have any spillage, but I can. Here we are. The oil's draining down, I can see it. Okay, excellent. And there is our filter, our cartridge filter that we're going to change out now. Right, what we'll do, we'll put the spent cartridge in a bag, and that way we can avoid a whole lot of mess, and we can get rid of it in an environmentally friendly way. Here we go. So it should just pull out. Here we go. Just leave that there. Put that in there. And we can put that to one side and minimize the mess. Now on here there is a little rubber seal. Let's see if we can just get that out. You do need to change that every time you do an oil change. You could just see it there. Here it is here. Actually, grab a proper screwdriver. You can just see it there. So, oops. Here we go. So that needs to come off, and we'll replace that with a new one that will come with the filter. And then what I like to do is just give this a little bit of a clean up. We want some oil around there because when this goes back in there, we obviously need some lubrication. If you keep the car clean and keep components like this clean, if there's a leak, you'll know exactly where to look and where it's coming from. Right, let's get a new one. Okay, so we've got our new filter. Yes, it's a man filter for men. That joke never gets old, does it? And some of you may be going, oh, why using a man filter? But I am. And if you use something alternative, that's good for you. In the meantime, that's what I'm using. So we'll put the filter on now. We'll get some oil and we'll just coat it, and that will allow this to go back on nice and smooth, and we want to make sure that it's sitting correctly in that groove, okay? Because if not, it's going to leak. So once that's in there, we grab our filter, okay, and we basically lock it in. So you should hear the click. When you hear the click, it's in place. And then just give it another smear so you make sure you've got enough oil around there, and then just screw it in. It should go in with little resistance, and as you get to the rubber tube, you'll start to feel a bit of resistance. That's normal, and there'll be enough lubrication in the tank to keep it lubricated. But once you get it in there as tight as you can with your hand, and then use your spanner to just finish it off. This doesn't need to be too tight, Okay, so don't over tighten it because you'll just ruin it because it is plastic. But when you start feeling resistance, then you know you're there. There you go. That's tight enough. Good. So we'll put the drain plug back in underneath. I'm not going to show you that because I'll have to bend my arm like 24 different ways, and we're not going to do that. And then we'll start filling up the oil. Okay, so we're going to top her up. This is a 5 litre jug. This one here. This car takes 5.5 litres, so we'll see how much she takes, because I always tend to find that there's some oil left over somehow, no matter how hard you try to get them out. So let's see how we go. Okay, so the oil reading is right just below the marker, so it's pretty much full. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do this again, because when we turn the car on, it's going to suck up some oil into the filter, so we'll have to do a top off of about 1 litre. So we'll get that done tomorrow because we're losing light.
The next morning.
Right, let's talk brakes now. So to take these brakes off, it's quite simple. 2 bolts, one at the top, one at the bottom. Brake caliper comes off. We'll then compress it in, and then we'll fit the new brakes. Now I'm not going to show you the whole process because you've seen me do this several times, but what I will show you is what the state of the pads are, and we are going to need to do the backs as well, because only inspecting those are very thin, so they need to be done as well. But we won't be doing that in this episode, we'll do that in the next. But what we will be doing is cleaning all of this up to make sure it looks and is in tip-top condition before it goes back into production. So let's get this off, and the next thing you will see is the state of the pads that are going in comparison to the ones that are... No, let's reverse that. The state of the pads coming out in comparison to the ones going in. That's better.
1 hour later.
Right, so we've taken the caliper off now, as you can see. The piston's been pushed back. Now let me show you something shocking. So here's the pads which are still in place. Let me show you a good pad. So this is a good pad, as you can see, plenty of meat on there, nice and thick. I'm going to take off the pad. There you are. Let's take this pad off. That is absolutely terrible. That really is. Look at that. Look how low that is. And just to give you a contrast, I'll put that to its side and I'll put that next to it, and you can see just how bad that is. That is terrible. That is not good at all. Yeah, not proud of that. And I think what's the reason why this has happened, because this cable's broken off, so the indicator that will normally light up the dashboard has broken. So we've not known about the brakes being in such poor condition, and because this is hidden by the caliper, you don't normally see that. So that's the reason why that's happened. So but it looks like we caught it in time, because there was a little bit of material on there, but not really enough to justify that. I mean, how this car stopped, I really don't know. I'm glad we caught it now. So we're going to clean up the carrier. The other one, I haven't had a look at that one yet. Let's take a look at that now. The other side. Yeah, that's just really bad, isn't it? That's terrible that they got into such a state and literally crumbling off the plate. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, the good news is we caught it now. But yeah, always check your brakes regularly, and that's why it's so important to do these services, that you're catching this in time and you don't get into this situation. It was only because I drove the car last week. We went away for a few days and the brakes just didn't feel right to me. So that's why I decided to do this service, which we're doing now. But what this really shows is how important it is to follow basic maintenance. And when it comes to brakes and performance, don't mess about with that, guys. Get it sorted. Right, so we're going to clean up the carrier. We'll put the brake pads back in, and then I'll show you well, I don't need to show you the assembled, like I said, you know. But just out of interest, when you're doing a full inspection, things like the gaiters on the CV joints, give them a good inspection, make sure that there's no cracks. If you see any signs of cracking, you need to replace them. Really, don't just leave it until the next service. Get them replaced, because going through a winter, road salts, etc., it just breaks it down even further. So maintenance is about preventing breakdown, so preventative maintenance is always the best policy. If you treat your car like an airplane maintenance, parts get changed before they wear out, because when you're in the sky and you break down, that's a problem. And if you treat your car like that, you won't be stranded in the middle of the road. And that's something that I've always maintained with my cars, always replacing components before they go end of life, and that way they don't break on you and you don't end up stranded. Right, let's get these brakes sorted. Okay, so brakes are now reassembled, and you can see what I mean about the cable, because the cable, brake wear sensor cable, goes under the caliper here and then to the connector here, and there's just a little bit here, so unless you were looking at that, you wouldn't know that it was disconnected or broken. So there you go. Don't know whether that's a bad design or not, but anyway, this side is done. We're going to get the other side done now. Oh, and we did have one casualty of war, the S sign. To bleed the brakes, you've got to put a plate over. There's a plate tool that sits, so my tool that pushes the actual caliper or the piston back in, it sits in here. So you've got to take the facial plate off, which is this here, and this one broke off because this bit here, or this piece here, is broken off in here. So yeah, a bit gutted about that, because that means now we can't put this back, but you know, it is what it is. We'll get another one. Hopefully they'll do this as a separate item. Probably cost £1 million, but probably worth getting. Right, so there's the finished products. Those are the brakes, those are the pads that we've taken off. This one is probably the worst of the four. That's literally just remnants on there. This one is okay, but you can see it's beginning to, well, you probably can't be, it's beginning to separate from the actual metal plate. So they were all in a real critical stage and they needed to be changed, so I'm glad we've caught that at this stage. With the problem with performance cars is, because they're driven hard, you do need to service them a lot more regular. And to be fair, when I first had this car, I've had this car now on the road since June of last year, so we've just gone over a year and the service was overdue. This being a major service, there are other elements that I didn't show you. The major service is pretty much a check, where you're just checking, making sure that everything is fine. So we know we've got to replace the brakes, and we'll replace those probably in next week's episode. But it just goes to show why it's important to maintain your car regularly and get these bits checked, because yeah, they were pretty bad. Okay, so after the shock of the brakes, I decided to call up Audi to find out what they would charge to do pretty much a full service. So this is what they said.
Thank you for calling Paul Audi. Laura speaking. How may I direct your call?
Could I have your service department, please?
Yes, of course. Can I ask what's regarding? It's just so I can let them know.
I want to get a cost to service my Audi S3.
Yep. And that was an Audi S3?
Correct.
Have you ever had anything like the spark plugs changed, etc. before, or no?
Yeah, I think the spark plugs were changed about 8,000 miles ago, so they're okay.
And do you know roughly what the mileage on the car is?
68,000.
68. So that's fine. I'm just working out roughly what you're going to need. Do you know if you last had the air filter done? Because they're every 60,000 miles.
Air filter's been done.
So air filter's been done?
Yep.
Spark plugs have been done?
Yep.
The Holdex, have you had the Holdex changed?
Not yet, no. Holdex needs to be done. Brake fluid hasn't been done since the car was new.
Okay, cool, that's fine. So, yeah, so we want brake fluid on there then, and we want the Holdex as well.
Could I get a cost with and without the Holdex?
Yeah, of course. So, with the bigger service, okay, including the pollen filter and an inspection and the oil change and the Haldex oil service and the brake fluid change, including all the parts, the labour and the VAT, you'll be looking at 517.
Okay.
26. If you don't want the Haldex, it only it takes £99.97 off.
Right, so the Haldex is £99, and it's, sorry, just confirm the total with?
517.
Yep.
And then 76 pence.
Lovely. Okay. I then later called them up to see what they would charge just to do the brakes. If they were just doing the brakes, it would be between £170 and that plus the parts. Quite expensive, but if they were doing it as part of the full service, then it was going to be £99. So pretty similar price to what they were charging to do a DSG oil change, which for £99 actually is not that bad for a DSG oil change on the RS6. But I'm going to find out how much the oil costs myself to see what that cost incorporates. But again, that charge was just, it was part of the service. So £571 is what they would charge. So what it cost me to do this service, included the brakes, was £101. You saw the brakes that I bought, Bembro. I don't know the brakes that Audi use, but Bembro are pretty good make. They're not your standard OEM style. They pretty much should be better. So £101 is what it cost me. So significant difference. That's a saving of 470 quid, which is big. So, and I get it, not everyone can service their cars, so, and you don't have to go to an Audi dealer as well. You can go to a local garage that you trust, and it will be significantly cheaper. But you can see how much money you can save on doing it yourself. And like I said in the beginning of this video, that servicing your vehicle is really mandatory. Don't just leave it until it breaks down. All the stuff that I do on my car, these are routine services that you should do, and that way you guarantee, or you minimize the risk of breaking down. So this video again has gone on quite longer than I expected it to be. So we'll bring you the information about the GTE next week. It's good news, by the way. I did speak to Racing Line, and Racing Line confirmed that their OEM does actually increase the electric motor. And there is probably a reason, there is a reason why that we couldn't get the electric motor running on the dyno last week. I just need to find out a few more facts, and then we'll confirm where that is in next week's video. So next week's video, we'll probably do the rear brakes on the S3, and those are electromagnetic brakes, so those take a little bit of increase in technology, so we have to use VCDS to reset those. But that's another story. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe down here, click on the bell notification, and we will see you next week. And all the tools that we use are in our Amazon store, which is in the link below, so feel free to get that. And also don't forget the information about Readly. That's also below, directly below, and that's a really good deal, so take advantage of that. Anyway guys, have a great week, and we will see you next week.